Zainab stood at the edge of the compound, watching the smoke rise from the cooking fires as the women prepared food for the funeral guests. Her father, Chief Okonkwo, had passed away 5 days ago, and the village was still draped in the heavy cloth of mourning. She wore a black wrapper that her mother had tied around her waist that morning, and her head was covered with a scarf that made her feel older than her 30 years. The funeral was the biggest event the village had seen in many seasons. People had come from neighboring towns, from the city, and from places so far away that Zainab could not even imagine them on a map. Her father had been an important man, a trader, a keeper of traditions, and someone that people trusted with their problems and their money. Now he was gone, and his body lay in the family compound, waiting to be buried according to the customs that had been passed down through generations. Zainab had been engaged to Tund for almost 2 years. Everyone in the village knew about their love. Tund was a successful businessman who had made money in the city but came back to invest in their community. He had a good heart, and more importantly, he respected Zainab. He had told her many times that she was smart, that she understood business, and that she would make a good wife and mother. Their wedding was supposed to happen in just 4 weeks. The decorations were already being planned. The families had exchanged gifts. Everything was ready. But now, with her father dead and the funeral happening, everything felt fragile and uncertain. Zainab's younger sister Fatima was moving through the crowd of mourners like a shadow. Fatima was 3 years younger, and she had always been different from Zainab. While Zainab was careful and thoughtful, Fatima was quick and restless. While Zainab earned respect through her work and her character, Fatima seemed to always be looking for shortcuts, for ways to get what she wanted without putting in the effort that real achievement required. Zainab had noticed something strange over the past few days. Fatima was always near Tund. When Tund sat with the other men discussing business and life, Fatima would find a reason to be close by. She would bring him water when he was thirsty. She would sit near him during the ceremonies. She would laugh at his jokes in a way that seemed too loud, too bright, too desperate to be noticed. On the 3rd day of the funeral, Zainab was busy in the kitchen with her mother and the other women, preparing the large pots of soup and rice that would feed the hundreds of guests. Her mother, Ada, had barely spoken since her husband died. She moved through the tasks like someone walking in a dream. Zainab stayed close to her, making sure she ate something, making sure she did not fall, making sure she did not completely disappear into her grief. It was during this time, while Zainab was occupied with her mother and the endless work of feeding people, that Fatima made her move. That evening, Zainab saw Fatima and Tund talking alone beneath the big mango tree at the edge of the compound. She did not think much of it at first. But then she noticed that Tund seemed different. He was listening to Fatima with an intensity that made Zainab's stomach feel strange. She watched as Fatima touched his arm. She watched as Tund did not pull away. When Tund came to speak with Zainab that night, his words came out slowly, carefully, like he was reading from a script that someone else had written for him. "I need to talk to you," he said. "Things have changed. I have been thinking about many things, and I realize that perhaps we are not right for each other." Zainab felt the world tilt beneath her. "What do you mean? What has changed?" "Your sister has helped me see things more clearly," Tund said, and Zainab's heart stopped. "She has told me that you have not been happy. She has said that you seem distant, that you do not love me the way I deserve to be loved." "That is not true," Zainab said, but her voice was very small. "Fatima does not know what she is talking about." "Maybe not," Tund said. "But I have decided that I want to marry someone with more passion, more life. Someone more like your sister." Zainab could not speak. She could not move. She could only listen as Tund told her that he was breaking their engagement, that he was going to marry Fatima instead. The next morning, during the funeral ceremony when all the village was gathered together to honor Chief Okonkwo's memory, Tund made his announcement. He stood up in front of everyone, in front of the elders, in front of the families, in front of all the people who had been invited to celebrate Zainab and Tund's love, and he said that he was breaking his engagement with Zainab. He said that he had decided to marry Fatima instead. The shock moved through the crowd like lightning. Women gasped. Men whispered to each other. Zainab's mother let out a cry that cut through the air like a knife. Zainab felt her legs become weak, and she had to sit down very quickly before she fell. But what happened next was even worse. Fatima stood up. She walked through the crowd with her head held high, and she began to laugh. It was a cruel laugh, a laugh that seemed to enjoy the pain of others. She looked directly at Zainab and she spoke so that everyone could hear her words. "You see," Fatima said, her voice sharp and mean. "I have taken what you could not keep. Tund wanted a real woman, not someone as cold and plain as you. You were never good enough for him anyway. I'm smarter than you. I am prettier than you. And now I have your fiancé, and there is nothing you can do about it. The people in the crowd did not know what to do. Some looked away. Some pretended not to hear. But everyone heard. Everyone saw. Everyone knew that Zainab's heart had just been broken in front of the entire village, broken by her own sister, broken at her own father's funeral. Zainab stood up on very shaky legs. She could feel everyone's eyes on her. She could feel the pity in their looks. She could feel the judgment. She wanted to run. She wanted to scream. She wanted to disappear. Instead, she walked slowly back to her mother's house. She did not cry. She could not cry. She was too broken to cry. She sat in the darkness of the room where her father's body had been kept, and she felt something inside her become hard and cold. She felt something inside her decide that she could not stay in this village anymore. She could not live in a place where her sister had betrayed her, where her fiancé had abandoned her, where everyone knew about her shame and her pain. That night, Zainab made a decision. She would leave. She would go far away. She would build a new life, and she would become someone that no one in this village could ever hurt again. The 6 months that followed the funeral were the longest of Zainab's life. She stayed in her mother's house, moving through each day like a person trapped inside a dream that would not end. She woke up in the morning, but it felt like she was still sleeping. She ate the food her mother placed in front of her, but she could not taste it. She existed, but she did not truly live. The village became a prison. Everywhere Zainab went, people looked at her with pity in their eyes. The market women would whisper when she passed by. The children would point and say, "That is the girl whose sister took her husband." At the well where the women gathered to collect water, conversations would stop when she arrived. She could feel their judgment hanging in the air like a heavy fog. Some women tried to comfort her. They told her that it was not her fault, that Fatima was wicked, that Tund was not worthy of her. But their words felt empty and useless. Zainab did not want their pity. She did not want their sympathy. She wanted to disappear. Her mother, Ada, worried constantly. She would sit next to Zainab in the evening and try to talk to her, but Zainab had very little to say. Ada tried to convince her daughter that life would go on, that this pain would fade with time, that there would be other men, other chances at happiness. But Zainab could not believe her. How could she believe in a future when her present was so dark? Fatima seemed to take pleasure in Zainab's suffering. She would come to the village market wearing her engagement ring, making sure that everyone saw it. She would walk past Zainab's mother's house and laugh loudly with her friends. She would talk about her plans for the wedding, about the beautiful house that Tund was building for her, about the fine clothes she would wear as a married woman. Every word seemed designed to cut deeper into Zainab's heart. One day, 6 months after the funeral, Zainab went to the market to buy vegetables for her mother. She was trying to move quickly, to do her work and return home without seeing anyone who knew her story. But as she was leaving the market, carrying her basket of tomatoes and peppers, she saw her sister. Fatima was standing in the middle of the market square, surrounded by a group of women. She was showing them her engagement ring, turning her hand this way and that so that the light would catch the stone and make it sparkle. She was laughing, talking about how rich Tund was, about how he had bought her the most expensive fabrics, about how her life was going to be perfect. And then Fatima saw Zainab. For a moment their eyes met. Zainab saw the triumph in her sister's face, the satisfaction of knowing that she had won, that she had taken everything that Zainab loved and made it her own. Fatima smiled a cruel smile and waved her hand, the ring flashing deliberately in Zainab's direction. Something broke inside Zainab at that moment. Not the kind of breaking that brings more pain, but the kind of breaking that brings clarity. She understood suddenly and completely that she could not stay in this place anymore. She could not spend the rest of her life watching her sister enjoy the victory of betrayal. She could not let this village define who she was or limit what she could become. That night, Zainab spoke to her mother. She told Ada about the pain, about the shame, about the way the village made her feel like she was dying slowly every single day. She told her that she needed to leave, that she needed to go somewhere far away where no one knew her story, where she could start fresh and become someone new. Ada cried when she heard these words. She did not want her daughter to leave. But she also understood the pain in her child's voice. She had lost her husband, and she could not bear to lose her daughter as well. After many hours of talking, Ada made a decision. Go, she told Zainab. Go to Lagos. Go to the city and build a new life. I will give you your father's blessing through my own words. He would have wanted this for you. He would have wanted you to be happy. Zainab's father had left her some money in his will, an inheritance that was meant to help secure her future. Her mother also gave her some savings that she had kept hidden for many years. Together, It was enough for Zainab to leave the village and start over in the city. One morning, early before the sun came up, Zainab packed a small bag with her clothes and her most important belongings. She hugged her mother for a very long time, breathing in the familiar smell of her, trying to hold on to the feeling of being loved and safe. Then she walked to the main road and caught a bus heading south to Lagos. Lagos was like nothing Zainab had ever seen. The city was enormous, loud, and full of people from everywhere. There were cars and trucks and motorcycles moving in all directions. There were buildings so tall that they seemed to touch the sky. There were markets and shops and restaurants and places of work that never seemed to stop moving even at night. At first, the city terrified her. She had never lived anywhere except the small village where she was born. She did not know how to navigate the streets. She did not know where to buy food or find a safe place to sleep. She felt lost and alone in a way that was even deeper than the pain she had felt at home. But slowly, very slowly, she began to find her way. Zainab found a small apartment that she could afford with her money. It was not beautiful or comfortable, but it was hers. She found a job at a technology company, working in the office doing administrative work. The pay was not much, but it was enough to pay for her apartment and her food. Her coworkers did not know her story. To them, she was just a quiet woman who did her work well and minded her own business. In the evenings, after work, Zainab attended classes. She wanted to improve her skills and learn new things. She took courses in computer skills, in business, and communication. She studied hard, taking notes late into the night, determined to become someone who could take care of herself, someone who did not need to depend on anyone else for her survival or her happiness. Her coworkers began to notice her talent and her dedication. After 1 year, she was promoted to a better position with more responsibility and more pay. After 2 years, she had earned another promotion. People began to respect her for her intelligence and her work ethic. She was no longer the rejected bride from the village. She was Zainab, a woman who was building something real and meaningful. She made friends in Lagos, women who had also come from small places and were trying to make something of themselves in the city. They would go out together on weekends, exploring the city, laughing, talking about their dreams and their fears. For the first time since her father's funeral, Zainab felt like she was part of something good. 2 years after leaving her village, Zainab barely recognized herself when she looked in the mirror. She was thinner, stronger, more confident. Her eyes had light in them again. She smiled easily and laughed with genuine happiness. When her mother came to visit her in Lagos, she cried tears of joy to see how much her daughter had changed. "You are not the same girl who left the village," her mother said, holding her daughter's face in her hands. "You are a woman now. A real woman. Your father would be so proud." Zainab was proud of herself. She had taken her pain and turned it into strength. She had taken her shame and transformed it into power. She was no longer defined by what her sister had done to her or what Tund had taken from her. She had built a life that was completely her own, and she was finally, truly free. The gala was held on a Friday evening in one of Lagos's most elegant hotels. The ballroom was decorated with flowers and lights, and the most important and successful people in the city had gathered to celebrate business and culture. Zainab had been invited by her company to attend as a representative. She almost did not go. She preferred to spend her evenings reading or resting at home, but her friend Chioma had insisted that she needed to get out more, to enjoy life, to give herself a chance to meet interesting people. So Zainab put on a beautiful traditional wrapper in deep blue and gold, paired it with a modern top that showed she was comfortable in both the old and the new worlds. She did her hair in a style that made her feel beautiful and strong. When she looked in the mirror before leaving, she saw a woman she was proud to be. The event was loud and crowded. There were people everywhere, talking and laughing, holding glasses of wine and eating small pieces of food from trays that moved through the crowd. Zainab felt a little uncomfortable at first. She was not used to such grand events. She stood near the edge of the room, watching people, listening to conversations about money and business and important things that seemed to matter only to wealthy people. That was when she saw him. He was standing across the room, talking to a group of men, but even in the middle of the conversation, his eyes seemed to be looking around, observing, taking in the details of everything and everyone around him. He was tall, with skin the color of rich chocolate, and he wore his suit with a kind of natural elegance that suggested he was comfortable in this world of important people and grand events. But what struck Zainab most was the way he looked at people. He listened to them completely, as if nothing else in the world existed except the person speaking to him. When their eyes met across the room, something shifted. He excused himself from his conversation and began walking toward her. Zainab's heart started beating faster. She had not felt this way in many years. this mix of excitement and nervousness and the feeling that something important was about to happen. "Good evening," he said when he reached her, extending his hand. "I am Kwesi. I could not help but notice you standing here, and I thought it would be rude of me not to come and introduce myself." "I am Zainab," she replied, shaking his hand. His grip was firm and warm and she did not want to let go. "Zainab," he said as if he was tasting the name, learning it. "That is a beautiful name. You look like someone who has a story worth telling." Zainab smiled. "Everyone has a story. The question is whether they are brave enough to share it." They talked for hours that night. Kwesi was an architect from Ghana who had come to Lagos to explore business opportunities for expanding his work into Nigeria. He told her about the buildings he had designed, about his vision for creating structures that were not just beautiful but that also served the people who lived and worked inside them. He spoke with passion about his work, and Zainab found herself completely absorbed in listening to him. But more than that, he asked her questions. Real questions. He wanted to know about her life, about where she came from, about what she dreamed of. When Zainab told him that she worked in technology, he did not lose interest the way some men did when they found out a woman was not in a traditionally impressive field. Instead, he asked her detailed questions about her work, about the challenges she faced, about her aspirations. "You are very smart," he said at one point, and Zainab felt something warm in her chest at the sincerity in his voice. "I can see it in the way you think, in the way you speak about your work. Do you know that you light up when you talk about something you care about?" By the end of the evening, Zainab did not want to leave. Kwesi asked for her phone number and he promised to call her the next day. True to his word, he called her. He asked her to have dinner with him. Their relationship developed slowly and carefully. Kwesi was not like Tund. He did not rush her or make grand promises. Instead, he spent time with her. He listened to her. He respected her opinions and her choices. When she told him that she was not ready to move too fast, that she had been hurt before, he simply nodded and said, "I understand. We can move at whatever pace feels right for you." Over the following months, they saw each other regularly. Kwesi would come to Lagos to spend time with Zainab, and sometimes she would travel to Accra to visit him. They would walk through markets together, trying local foods and laughing at each other's attempts to bargain with the vendors. They would go to restaurants and talk late into the night about everything: their families, their dreams, their fears, the things they hoped to accomplish in their lives. Zainab introduced Kwesi to her mother, who had come to Lagos for a visit. Ada looked at the way her daughter's face changed when Kwesi was near and she smiled. She could see that this man was different from Tund. She could see that he valued her daughter not for what she could give him, but for who she was. Kwesi took Zainab to meet his family in Accra. His mother was a woman of great wisdom and grace, and she welcomed Zainab as if she had known her all her life. She held Zainab's hand and said, "I can see that you are the one my son has been waiting for. You have strength in your eyes." 1 year after they met at the gala, Kwesi invited Zainab to Accra for a special weekend. He told her he wanted to show her something he had been working on. When they arrived in the city, he took her to the top of a building that he had designed himself. It was a beautiful structure of glass and steel, and from the rooftop, you could see the entire city spread out below you like a picture. They arrived at sunset. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple and pink, colors so beautiful that they seemed almost unreal. Zainab stood at the edge of the roof, looking out at the view, feeling the warm wind on her face. "This building means everything to me," Kwesi said, coming to stand beside her. "But you know what? It means nothing compared to you. These past months with you have been the happiest of my life. You have made me believe in love again. You have shown me that it is possible to find someone who understands you completely, who respects you, who wants to build something real and meaningful with you." Zainab turned to look at him, and she saw that he was holding something in his hand. It was a ring, but it was not like any ring she had ever seen. It was made of gold, and the stone in the center was not a diamond but something more unique. Kwesi had designed it himself, and he explained that each element of the ring told a part of their story. "The gold represents the strength and the value that I saw in you from the first moment," he said. "The stone is from a mine in Ghana where my family comes from, and it represents my home and my heritage. The way the stone is cut in this particular pattern, it represents your journey from darkness into light." He got down on one knee right there on the rooftop as the sun was setting, and he asked her to marry him. Zainab could not speak. She could only nod as tears of happiness ran down her face. She had never imagined, when she left her village in shame and pain, that she would one day find someone like this. She had never believed that she could be this happy, this loved, this completely valued for who she was. She said yes. Zainab decided that she wanted to tell her family about her engagement in person. She wanted to see her mother's face when she heard the news. She wanted to walk back into her village not as the rejected bride, but as a woman who had built something beautiful and true. So she booked a ticket on a bus heading north, back to the place she had left 3 years ago. The journey took many hours. As the bus moved through the countryside, Zainab watched the landscape change. The tall buildings and busy streets of Lagos gradually gave way to smaller towns and villages. The air became fresher, less filled with the smell of car exhaust and smoke. Finally, as the sun was beginning to set, she saw the road that led to her village. Her heart was beating very fast. The village looked exactly the same as she remembered it, yet somehow different. The compound where her mother lived was still there, with the same walls and the same gate. The market where she used to shop was still in the same place. The well where the women gathered to collect water was still surrounded by the same flat stones. But Zainab herself had changed so much that everything else seemed smaller, less important than it once was. She did not go directly to her mother's house. Instead, she went to the market first. She knew that news traveled quickly in small villages, and she wanted the whole community to know that she had returned. She walked slowly through the market, stopping to buy vegetables, greeting people she had known all her life. She was dressed beautifully in clothes that showed her success, and she carried herself with a confidence that was new and different. Within 2 hours, everyone in the village knew. Zainab had returned. She was wearing fine clothes. She looked happy and healthy. And most importantly, she seemed to be wearing a beautiful ring on her left hand. By the time Zainab reached her mother's house, Ada was already standing at the gate, tears streaming down her face. She had been told that her daughter was coming, and she had come outside to wait. When she saw Zainab, she cried out and ran toward her, holding her daughter as if she might disappear again. "My child," Ada said over and over again. "My child has come home. You look so beautiful. You look so happy. What has happened to you in the city?" "I have a story to tell you," Zainab said, smiling at her mother. "But first let me embrace you properly. I have missed you so much." That evening, Zainab sat with her mother in their home and told her everything. She told her about meeting Kwesi, about how he listened to her and valued her, about the time they spent together traveling between Lagos and Accra. She showed her mother the ring and explained what each element meant. She told her about the proposal on the rooftop as the sun was setting. Ada listened with joy and pride in her eyes. "Your father would be so happy," Ada said, holding her daughter's hand. "He always believed that good things would come to you. He always said that you were special, that you had something inside you that no one could take away." News of Zainab's engagement spread through the village like fire. Within a day everyone knew. The market women talked about it. The men discussed it under the big tree where they gathered. The children repeated it to each other. There was a sense of excitement in the village, a sense that something important and good was happening. But there was one person who did not feel excited. Fatima heard the news while she was at the market. Someone told her that Zainab had returned and that she was engaged to someone very important. Fatima's face went pale. She did not feel happy for her sister. Instead, she felt a creeping sense of dread, like something dark was approaching. Fatima's life with Tund had not turned out the way she had imagined. She had thought that taking Tund away from Zainab would bring her happiness, would bring her the love and attention and admiration that she had always wanted. But it had not. Instead, she had discovered that Tund was not the man she thought he was. He was not kind or generous or interesting. He was bored with her and she was bored with him. He spent most of his time away from home, conducting business in the city, and when he was home he barely spoke to her. Worse than that, the village did not admire her the way she had thought they would. They did not respect her for winning Tund. Instead, they whispered about how she had betrayed her own sister, how she had taken advantage of a moment of weakness and pain. They did not invite her to important gatherings. The other women did not sit with her at the market. She had achieved what she thought she wanted, only to discover that it meant nothing. Now, hearing that Zainab had not just survived but had thrived, that she had built a successful life in the city, that she had found love with someone new, this cut deeply into Fatima's heart. She felt a cold, hard knot of fear and jealousy in her chest. She went immediately to her mother's house to find out more. When she arrived, she found Zainab sitting with their mother in the front room. Zainab looked up when Fatima entered, and for a moment, neither sister said anything. "So you have come back," Fatima said finally, and her voice was not warm or welcoming. "I heard that you are engaged. Who is this man that you are going to marry? Is he someone from the city? Is he rich?" Zainab looked at her sister calmly. She did not feel anger when she looked at Fatima. She felt something closer to pity. She could see that her sister had not found happiness, that the victory she had won so cruelly had turned to dust in her hands. "His name is Kwesi," Zainab said quietly. "He is a good man. He is kind and intelligent and he treats me with respect. I am very happy with him." "But who is he?" Fatima demanded, her voice becoming sharp. "What does he do? How much money does he have? You must tell me more than this." Zainab smiled, and there was something mysterious in her smile. "You will meet him at the wedding. That is when everyone will see who he is. For now, that is all you need to know." Fatima felt the cold dread in her chest grow colder. Something in Zainab's expression, something in the way she spoke with such confidence and certainty, suggested that this man, this Kwesi, was someone important. Someone significant. Someone who would make Fatima's betrayal look even worse than it already looked. Over the next few days, the village buzzed with speculation. Who was Zainab's fiancé? Where did he come from? How much money did he have? Was he famous? Was he important? The curiosity grew and grew, feeding on itself, becoming bigger and bigger. Fatima tried to find out more information. She asked everyone she met if they knew anything about this man called Kwesi. But Zainab had told no one anything specific. She only smiled when people asked her questions. She would say things like, "You will see at the wedding," or "He is a man of many talents," or "The village will be very surprised." This mysterious silence made Fatima more and more anxious. She could not sleep well at night. She could not eat properly. She felt a constant sense of worry and fear growing inside her, like a plant that was spreading its roots through her entire body. One night, she lay awake in the house that she shared with Tund, and she thought about what she had done. She had betrayed her own sister. She had mocked her sister's pain. She had won something that she thought was valuable, only to discover that it was worthless. And now her sister had come back, transformed, successful, happy, and about to marry someone mysterious and important. Fatima finally understood that she had made a terrible mistake. And there was nothing she could do to undo it. The wedding day arrived on a Saturday morning in Lagos, and the entire city seemed to be celebrating. Zainab woke up in her apartment feeling calm and peaceful, not nervous the way many brides feel on their wedding day. She had waited for this day with joy, not with fear. She knew that she was marrying the right man, the man who truly saw her and valued her for who she was. The venue was one of the most beautiful hotels in Lagos, a place with grand halls and elegant decorations. Zainab's mother had traveled to the city a week earlier to help with the preparations. She spent hours with the event planners, making sure that the decorations reflected both Nigerian and Ghanaian traditions, creating a space that honored both families and both countries. By noon, hundreds of people had arrived. There were business leaders and entrepreneurs from Lagos and Accra, people who knew Kwesi and respected his work. There were members of Kwesi's prominent Ghanaian family, aunts and uncles and cousins who had traveled to Lagos to celebrate this union. And there were people from Zainab's village, including her mother Ada, who sat in the front row with tears of happiness streaming down her face. Fatima had come too. Tund had insisted that they attend, even though he knew it would be difficult for Fatima to watch her sister marry a man who was clearly very successful and important. Fatima wore a beautiful dress that Tund had bought for her, but no amount of fine clothing could hide the anxiety that showed on her face. She sat in the middle of the crowd, trying to be invisible, trying to prepare herself for whatever she was about to see. The music began and Zainab walked into the hall. She was dressed in a stunning wedding gown that combined modern style with traditional African elements. Her wrapper was made of the finest Kent cloth, woven in patterns of gold and cream and deep blue. Her gown was tailored perfectly to her body, showing her grace and elegance. On her head, she wore a crown of flowers and gold ornaments that caught the light as she moved. She looked like a queen. But it was not Zainab that made everyone in the room catch their breath. It was when Kwesi appeared. He walked into the hall from a side door, and Fatima immediately felt her stomach drop. Kwesi was not just handsome or well-dressed, though he was both of these things. What made people stare was the presence that he carried with him, the sense that he was someone important, someone who had accomplished great things, someone who was respected and admired across the entire region. Whispers ran through the crowd. Business leaders nodded at him respectfully. Important men stood up as he passed. Fatima could see that people knew him, that they respected him greatly. She felt her face become hot, and she gripped the arms of her chair very tightly. As Kwesi walked to the front of the hall to meet Zainab, a woman who was sitting near Fatima leaned over and whispered to her friend, "Do you know who that is?" "That is Kwesi Mensah. He is one of the most successful architects and entrepreneurs in West Africa. He has designed buildings in Ghana, Nigeria, Ivory Coast, and Senegal. He is worth millions. This is incredible." Fatima felt like the air had been knocked out of her lungs. She could not breathe properly. She could not think clearly. How was this possible? How had her sister, the girl she had mocked and humiliated, managed to marry one of the most successful and important men in the entire region? Zainab and Kwesi stood facing each other at the altar, and a priest began to speak the marriage vows. But before they exchanged the traditional words, Kwesi asked if he could say something. The priest agreed, and Kwesi turned to face Zainab directly. "Zainab," he began, his voice strong and clear so that everyone in the room could hear him. "When I first saw you at that gala in Lagos, I did not know your story. I did not know the pain you had experienced or the strength you had built within yourself. But I could see something in your eyes, something that told me you were special. You were someone who had been through difficult times and had come out stronger on the other side." He paused, and his eyes were filled with emotion. "Over the time we have known each other, I have come to understand your journey. I have learned about the betrayal you experienced, about the shame that was placed upon you, about how you picked yourself up and built a completely new life in a new city. I have learned that you are one of the strongest people I have ever met. Not because you never cry or never feel pain, but because you do not let pain define you. You transform it into power. You transform it into wisdom. You transform it into love." Zainab was crying now, tears of happiness running down her face. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you," Kwesi continued. "Not because of what you have achieved in business, though that is impressive. Not because of how beautiful you are, though you are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen. I want to spend my life with you because of who you are as a person. Because you are kind. Because you are intelligent. Because you are honest and true. Because you make me want to be a better man. I love you completely, and I am honored to call you my wife." In that moment, the entire room erupted in applause. People stood up and cheered. Even the serious business leaders had tears in their eyes. It was one of the most beautiful declarations of love that most people in the room had ever heard. But Fatima was not clapping. She was frozen in her seat, staring at Kwesi and Zainab, feeling something like ice water flowing through her veins. She finally understood what she had done. She had pushed away a woman who was meant for greatness, a woman who was destined to build something beautiful and meaningful with someone who truly valued her. And what had she gained? She had gained Tund, a man who did not love her, a man who was sitting next to her right now looking bored and disconnected. She had betrayed her sister for a hollow victory, for a man who was worth nothing compared to the man her sister had found. Zainab and Kwesi exchanged vows, and then they were pronounced husband and wife. They kissed and the crowd cheered and celebrated. But during the celebration, something remarkable happened. Zainab saw her sister sitting alone, looking broken and defeated. And instead of feeling triumph or satisfaction, Zainab felt compassion. Later, at the reception, after many hours of celebration and dancing and eating, Zainab left Kwesi for a moment and walked over to where Fatima was sitting alone, away from the festivities. "Hello, sister," Zainab said quietly. Fatima looked up, and her eyes were filled with tears of shame. "I am sorry," she said. "I am so sorry for what I did to you. I was jealous and cruel, and I destroyed something beautiful because I was too blind to see what I had." Zainab sat down next to her sister and she took her hand. "I know," she said. "And I forgive you. Not because what you did was right, but because holding on to anger and hurt would only hurt me more. I have learned that forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves, not something we do for other people." Fatima cried, finally allowing herself to feel the weight of her mistakes and her regrets. Throughout the evening, people came to congratulate Zainab and Kwesi. The business leaders wanted to discuss potential projects with Kwesi. The villagers from Zainab's home were amazed and impressed by the grandness of the celebration, by the importance of the people in attendance, by the obvious love and respect that Kwesi had for Zainab. As the sun set over Lagos and the reception continued late into the night, Zainab stood with her new husband and looked out at the celebration. She thought about the girl she had been 3 years ago, broken and humiliated, sitting in her mother's house feeling like her life was over. That girl had seemed so far away now, like a person from a different lifetime. She had survived. She had rebuilt herself. She had built a life that was not just good but extraordinary. And she had done it not by seeking revenge or by trying to prove something to her sister or to the village. She had done it by focusing on herself, on her own growth, on becoming the best version of herself that she could possibly be. That was the real victory. That was what mattered. And as Kwesi pulled her close and they danced together under the lights, Zainab knew that her life was just beginning.